Be ready. 5 seconds. Not only in India, but almost everywhere in the world, sustainable development has become the new buzzword. Every international agency, from the World Bank to the UNICEF, and almost every country is talking of it. But what does this sustainable development mean? Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. This definition has been offered by the World Commission on Environment and Development in its report Our Common Future 1987 and widely accepted. Economists define it as an economic progress in which the quantity and quality of our stocks of natural resources like forests and the integrity of biogeochemical cycles like climate are sustained and passed on unimpaired to future generations. Sustainable simply means keeping something going for an indefinite period of time. However, when governments and industrial interests talk of sustainable extraction of coal from coal fields or oil from oil fields or coral from coral reefs or of sustainable farming by modern methods, which depend on the input of finite fossil fuels, it is often out of ignorance, greed, or with an intent to mislead. In its modern form, sustainable development was born and developed in the World Conservation Strategy produced jointly in 1980. It aimed to help advance the achievement of sustainable development through the conservation of living resources. It declared that conservation, like development, is for the people, and thus implicitly assigned to all other species, plant or animal, a status of existence that is primarily for human use. That is the way all future development was to take place and be judged. The concept assumed immense importance against the backdrop of the growth of human population and modern man's indiscriminate and unbridled exploitation of environment to gratify his ever growing hunger for prosperity. The two factors may soon exhaust the environmental resources, and the planet will then not help in the survival of even human beings. People and planners must accept that there is a finite amount of habitable land and water on this earth. A specific concern is that those who enjoy the fruits of economic development today may be making future generations worse off by overexploitation of the natural resources and polluting the earth's environment. Adding to the problems caused by population growth is the economic explosion. During the 20th century, world economy has expanded 20 times and industrialization has increased by a factor of 5 since 1950. This boom has depleted stocks of ecological capital such as fuel, forests, soils, species, water, atmosphere, etc. faster than such stocks can be replenished. Our own success thus threatens to become our undoing. Environmental degradation has already been massive, yet not many seem to be aware of it. The natural resources are being exploited without much consideration for the future generations. Because of the holes in the ozone shield and the accumulation of greenhouse gases, the world as a whole may already be on a critical threshold. Indications of ecological degradation only reveal that economic growth of the present kind, which depends on consuming the Earth's natural and environmental resources, is not sustainable. Thus, human survival and development today more than ever depend on two critical factors: a check on the population and a successful management rather than exploitation of the world's natural resources. The process of economic transformation in recent years is seen to have involved a rapid increase in the scale of human pressure on the environment and also radical structural transformation, particularly in terms of urbanization and industrialization. Threats to the environment can be linked directly with these rapid changes in several different ways. For example, as population expands, people move into previously empty areas, generally involving destruction of various species of flora as well as fauna. Quite a different form of environmental degradation results from effluents, smoke, and other waste produced by industrial operations. The crowding of people into urban areas requires sanitary, transport, and housing arrangements which are more complex and often more costly than those in the countryside, and all are accompanied by varying degrees of pollution. Sustainability can never be absolute. It is not plausible that all natural resources can or even need to be preserved. Successful development will inevitably involve some amount of clearing of land, drilling for oil, damming of rivers, and swamp draining. But economic development and sound environmental management are complementary aspects of the same agenda. Without adequate environmental protection, development will be undermined, and without development, environmental protection will fail. Each society experiments and learns from its own mistakes. Sustainable development cannot be thrust upon anyone by an external agent, whether it is the World Bank, the UNO, or the Forestry Department of a government, simply because it believes at any point of time that it has learned all the lessons there are to learn. That will be a process towards unsustainable development. Strong public institutions and environmental protection policies seem to be essential. Policy reforms must focus on changing agricultural and industrial practices so as to reduce drastically the amount of pollution, wastes, and other environmental damage per unit of output. Environmental impacts need to be recognized. Policies aimed at changing behavior should rely heavily on economic incentives. Early action to prevent degradation will usually be much cheaper than attempting to reverse it later. Maybe there should be a retrospective study of past practices, especially in agriculture, to see if they could not be applied with modifications to suit present needs. Several farmers are indeed discarding chemical fertilizers and pesticides and going back to traditional manures and biological pest control. Such steps certainly help towards making development sustainable. Responsive and effective institutions must be developed. Dissemination of information and analysis must be improved to assist in setting up priorities and formulating policies. In the formulation of policies and decision making, effective participation of the people on the spot should be ensured. Finding and implementing solutions to environmental problems requires a partnership of efforts among nations. Industrial countries should assist in the transfer of less polluting technology to the developing countries.